Hello, and welcome back to Edge of Your Seat. If you haven't seen episode 1, go back and watch it. If you have, let's get on with this thing. Logan is bleak and bloody and very different. An adult comic book flavoured action road trip farewell to the X-Men's Wolverine and Charles Xavier, it celebrates the passing of the two icons of the genre by giving them pretty much the best film of the franchise. Patrick Stewart plays a blinder as a not altogether there Professor X, straining to be the optimist he once was. Hugh Jackman owns the title role and gives us one last snarl of the dying beast, and surprisingly Daphne Keane keeps up with the old hands as the brilliant X-23. Ultimately, it's all about these characters, and if this really is goodbye, then they've thrown one hell of a wake. A good horror can tense you up and make your skin crawl. A bad one can make you laugh. But it's a frankly amazing horror that can pull off both in equal measure, whilst also making you think. Get Out manages all that, telling the horribly off-kilter story of a middle-class white girl taking her black boyfriend to meet the parents. It's like the Stepford Wives for people of colour. It makes right-on white lefties like me squirm and laugh uncomfortably as we realise how unwittingly awful we can be sometimes. But it's also self-aware enough to be genuinely funny too. It's one of the best and most important films of this year. Viceroy's House is a fine, decent film, but not a great one. It tells the story of the partition of India and Pakistan at the end of the British Empire's occupation, mainly from the British perspective. There are flashes of brilliance, some really nice scenes, and a general feeling of accelerated purpose for the second and final act, but ultimately it just feels too safe. Perhaps it's partly my fault. A film named for an establishment building and starring Hugh Bonneville was unlikely to be the bottom-up history that I'd prefer, but even so it rarely rises above okay. Very much a Sunday afternoon BBC job. 20th Century Women is a lovely indie-flavoured celebration of the inner lives of women through the perspective of a fraying mother-son relationship. The boys' embrace of feminism is particularly charming, if also a bit naive, as are the mother's attempts to understand punk. It might be a bit too arty and episodic for some, but I loved it. It probably helped that I saw it on International Women's Day with the woman who raised me. Kong Skull Island is a supercharged B-movie monster mash. Set during the Vietnam War and serving as a prequel to Godzilla, it follows an expedition to Skull Island and the discovery of Kong. It could easily be called Apocalypse Kong or Kong of Darkness. Hell, Tom Hiddleston's character is called Conrad. The human characters are given enough and played by good enough actors to make their story worth following, especially John C. Reilly's Lost Pilot and Sam L. Jackson's Ahab analog. But the real star is the damn dirty ape himself and the glorious battles they give him. This is a CGI blockbuster done right. Do I even need to summarise the plot of Beauty and the Beast at this point? Especially Disney's version? Alright, fine. Selfish twat is cursed. Smart, beautiful girl needs to break spell. Happily ever after, possible bestiality. Alright? Good. So, the new one. Pros. Lovely set design, costume design and choreography. Some fair CGI, some decent performances. Cons. Pretty much everything else. Emma Watson still can't act, or sing without auto-tune. Dan Stevens and his servants were lost behind CGI, and there's a lot of padding and filler. But when it's not being padded, including one bit of almost plot-breaking contrivance, it's just a shot-for-shot redo of the groundbreaking 1991 original. So just watch that one instead! Life is basically Alien meets Gravity with a little touch of The Thing, and it's as shockingly fun as that suggests. It's not particularly deep and there are parts that struggle to work, but when it does, it's just really entertaining. The characters are likeable, even their stupidity. You're astronauts! How are you this thick? The creature itself is fascinating and genuinely creepy, a kind of octo-jellypuss. And the story is stripped back and cool. It's not as good as Alien, but it's the best Alien film in years. The Lost City of Zed is a traditional throwback about a man's obsession with finding an ancient civilization. Charlie Hunnam is surprisingly great here as a lead, physically showing the passing years' weight on the man. Some might expect a swashbuckling adventure film, and in that regard it might be disappointing. It takes its time building the drama, but ultimately it's a refreshingly old-fashioned tale without the attitudes to match. A Silent Voice is probably the best anime I've seen since Your Name, a lovely story of friendship and redemption in the wake of bullying. It makes the interesting choice to approach this from the bully's angle, meaning the protagonist has to earn back respect as much from the audience as from the victim. It's especially good at capturing the social awkwardness of teen life. Power Rangers is an enjoyable reboot of the 90s Super Sentai show about teenage superheroes. No, it's not a great film. It has a Man of Steel washed out greyness, the camera work is often shoddy, and the Zords are basically just Transformers. But the kids are engaging, and I was genuinely kind of thrilled to see them come together with their message of teamwork to punch a giant monster in the face! It feels like a version of Fant4stick that actually works, embracing its cheesy origins, Elizabeth Banks, take a bow, whilst aiming for relevance. I could certainly go see another, though next time, ease off on the donut adverts. The Boss Baby may be silly and lacking the depth of Pixar, but it's still really enjoyable for what it is. It's much more of a classic cartoon than expected, with a lot of the visual style playfully riffing on the old 60s Hanna-Barbera cartoons, especially the inventive scenes inside a child's imagination. The premise of a baby company executive coming down from heaven to stop puppies cornering the market on love is daft, but it fits right in as an old-school cartoon plot. Alec Baldwin steals it though, channeling his inner Trump, though with a heart and a brain. For kids' films, you could do a lot worse. I went into Smurfs The Lost Village with no expectations, just to kill time. Whilst it's no classic, predictable story, so-so animation, it was far better than expected. Especially after the two shit shows of real-world Smurfs, this one felt much closer to the TV show that I remember. So yes, it was sappy and safe, and yes, the attempted updates were cringe-worthy. Smurfy selfie! But it was mostly just innocent, harmless fun. Plus, it managed to be surprisingly feminist. No, seriously, it's smurfing feminist! So, props at least for that. Free Fire is just pure genre action fun. Set almost entirely in a rusty abandoned warehouse in the 70s, it's a simple setup of an arms deal gone wrong and the resultant bloody fallout. It's tightly written and directed, and the cast bring their all as a bunch of mostly unlikable bastards. Ultimately, it's a joy to see them all blown away. Brie Larson in particular is excellent as an underestimated badass. Can't wait to see her as Captain Marvel. Judging it on its own merit, Ghost in the Shell is a gorgeous-looking spectacle with a cool dark synth soundtrack and some solid performances, telling the story of a cybernetically enhanced super soldier called Major, her first mission and her quest to discover her own past. But the script is just sadly generic. The film manages to spoil itself before a big reveal moment. Show don't tell, guys! If you just want a brainlessly cool Scarlett Johansson film like Lucy, you might have fun. But if you're expecting anything as good as the anime, you'll be disappointed. Oh, and given the whole whitewashing controversy surrounding Major's character, her ethnicity is really badly handled. Raw is a French-language slippery slope body horror about a vegetarian slowly becoming a cannibal. It won't be for everyone, obviously. Some will be turned off by the grisliness, others by the subtitles, but it's a beautiful and terrifying look at the expectations that we place on young women. I Am Not Your Negro is a provocative and brilliant look at race relations in the US, tying the civil rights era of Martin Luther King and Malcolm X to the Black Lives Matter movement and Ferguson. Hard and uncomfortable, but truly necessary viewing for anyone who thinks equality is over. It's the only documentary I watched in the cinemas this year, but it's a damn good one. The Handmaiden is an erotic thriller by Park Chan-wook. It's loosely based on the novel Fingersmith by Sarah Waters. Sorry, not read it. The book is set in Victorian England, but the film is successfully transposed to 1930s Korea with the class issues of colonial Japan. As anyone who's seen Old Boy would expect, it's gorgeous to look at, but with a dark, almost perverse heart. The story is essentially a pulpy, twisty, multi-angle con with lovely dollops of class commentary, explicit sex, and gory violence. The Belko Experiment setup is simple. It's battle royale in an office block, so you know going in that it's all about the carnage and the panic, and it certainly delivers on that. There's also a slightly ironic sense of humour to it, with wildly inappropriate music and twisted office jargon. If it's got any worthwhile social commentary, it's that the worldly inclusive language of corporate jobs is a thin, false veneer covering the literal cutthroat business of old. It's lurid, none too subtle, and not hugely original, but it's gory good fun for genre fans. Twilight. I thought it sucked. Not very realistic at all. These are the words of Milo, the main character of the Transfiguration. They might as well be a thesis statement for the film. Using vampirism to tell a teen coming-of-age story, this is the anti-Twilight. Instead of deifying vampires through a complete lack of knowledge, this film makes Milo sympathetic but repulsive, a banal evil in a world of very real horrors. This is very much a slow-burn character piece rather than a full-on horror, but it's still one of the best vampire films I've seen in ages. Their finest is the charming story of life on the World War II home front. Gemma Arterton and Bill Nighy carry it as, respectively, the writer and performer of wartime propaganda left behind because of gender and age. It's gently funny and gently romantic, occasionally being slightly too gentle for its own good in the drama department. Probably another Sunday afternoon BBC affair rather than a must-see cinematic experience, but it's pleasant and enjoyable nonetheless. Standard YouTube plug, like, share and subscribe please.